week. 40 minutes.
I have to
Right?
leave like
Awesome.
a little before 3 anyway, so
And
I
honestly,
agree.
this
because I'm at work,
lesson,
this is my lunch hour, so.
oh, perfect. This lesson was, there was only like 3 questions. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah,
Perfect.
super
Let's
nice.
go through them like boom, 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 and just get it done so we can all get back to that research paper. Research paper.
Okay, so one thing that I have noticed that we haven't done is we haven't been starting with a prayer. Can we do that?
Yeah, I didn't know we were supposed to do that.
Usually with any meetings that we do, most meetings everybody does. But before we start, hold on, my doctor's office is calling me. Hello? This is. Okay. Okay. I can, but I'm gonna need to call back for that. I have it, so I'm just in the middle of a meeting. So, okay. All right. Thanks. Bye. Sorry. Okay.
No, you're fine.
All good.
Anybody want to say it? I can. That's fine. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be able to come together today to discuss these questions and discuss this class. Please help us that we may be able to be more informed and to become better advocates, not only for ourselves, but for others. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so let me get back on my sheet here. So question 1. I actually, before we start, what did you guys think of the Common Core debacle or debate?
That's the topic of my paper, so I have lots of words that I probably shouldn't start getting into. I'm a child development major, and you can't, like, you don't even want to be in on the conversations that the department, like the people in our major have about that particular topic.
You know,
Words.
so you guys, do any of you guys have children? Anybody else have any kids? No,
Nope.
so I'm the only parent here. So I personally I'm not very informed on the Common Core issue. And so this was kind of an eye-opening experience to me, being a parent and seeing what the issues are. And so coming from my standpoint as a parent, I'm not very happy about it. So I can see the pros and I can see the cons, but I'm kind of perplexed as to why they think these things need to be the way that they are. So
I think that was the biggest thing for me too, is like, regardless of even like the topics and the materials of it, is like the parents, the public in general just didn't really know about it. Very
yeah,
much.
I
think
feel like
that's the biggest thing that bothers me.
I feel like they implemented this and didn't ask or do research or anything on the effects of what the implementation of the Common Core was going to do. And it's kind of scary that we have this government personnel or whoever, these people just like jumping in there and saying, well, this is how your kids need to learn, and here you go. So,
Okay, here's my biggest problem with Common Core. There is a difference between setting standards and follow a curriculum. They are two totally different things.
agreed.
And it drives me absolutely nuts. Like, it's okay to say, okay, these are the national standards. Like, kids need to be able to do this kind of math and this kind of thing and this, and this before they graduate from high school. That's totally fine. Problem with is, like, which the part that I don't know a whole lot about is the curriculum itself that they have supposedly implemented with this. Like the NAEYC, which is the leading education and what like unit for children. They're the professional group that child development majors generally join with. They have a set of standards that we consider to be developmentally appropriate guidelines. Guidelines set standards for the way that we interact with children, the way that we teach children, how we develop their activities, like all of these things. They're guidelines. And there's 12 like standards, and then there's subsections to each of those that explain what we do. And that is normal. Every single company, every single experience with everything you're ever going to have is going to have that. The FDA has that for food safety. We have it for education. We have it for drugs. We have it for transportation, for the way that, you know, like patents are approved, those kinds of things. We have it for everything. But what we don't do is we don't go into like a lot of these places and then tell them specifically how they have to do it. Like, okay, your workers have to clean everything in this order. They have to do it this way with these products. But that's where we get conflict with education. It's that people come in and they set the standards, but then they come in and they also want to give the curriculum. They want to give this specific, like, okay, this is how you're going to do it. And that, I think, is where everyone gets upset. It's these worksheets that are being published. Like if you saw, I don't know, I found an article about it when I was doing my research, and it was like written by one of the posts in one of the states, and it's that were being used to meet the Common Core standards. And there's nothing wrong with teaching kids how to do math and subtraction and things in these new ways to help more kids understand it. But the problem is if you make all the kids do it the same way. Because not all kids' brains work the same way. And that part that drives me nuts. I don't care about the standards as much. I care a lot more about the curriculum.
Right. I agree with that, because I will tell you what, I have my 4-year-old who's in preschool, so honestly he's learning just bits and pieces, you know, he's starting to learn his ABCs and blah blah blah. And then we have my 6-year-old who is starting to read and write and do math. Teaching her how to do math is different than the math that I learned and I would have taught. And then we have my 11-year-old, and I can't help her do homework. I honestly, the way that they're teaching her, I have no idea how to help her. She comes home with problems or questions, and I'm like, sorry, kid, I can't help you. I don't know what to do. I don't know how you're learning. This method of learning that you're learning is completely different than what I was taught. And then, you know, she's correcting me. No, Mom, you're doing it wrong. So to me, that's, I think, is the hardest thing, is the way that they, like you said, the way that they're doing the curriculum is tough. It's really tough.
Well, and that might be one of the bigger problems, because at the very end of the video, it said that, you know, the biggest difference in a child's education is the parents' involvement. And if the parents can't be involved with Common Core because they have no idea, you know, how to do it or what's going on, then that, I think, is one of the bigger problems of it.
It's a huge issue, just because not only do you have parents who can't help their children figure it out, you have problems that are parents that won't. And I think that's the bigger issue, is you have these parents who are trying to understand and trying to help their kids, but you have parents who are just saying, nope, I'm leaving it up to the public school system. They're the ones that are going to teach my kid. And I think that's kind of that's the bigger issue than, yeah.
Actually, the bigger issue I have is homework, but we're not going to talk about that today. It's not proven effective. Shouldn't have to do homework until high school. I'm not going to get into that.
Now,
let's answer the questions.
I think you could teach us a lot.
We could go on and on, right?
I could talk a lot on this. Just, I'm going to try and be quiet for this, because otherwise I'm going to talk for like 3 hours.
Oh my goodness. So if you were to pick a side on the Common Core debate, strictly based on the information from the evaluating research, which would you pick and why? I don't know. I'm pretty much in agreement that I would say that the Common Core is not, it's not effective. I don't feel that it is. I don't feel that it actually benefits these high school students. I don't think it actually prepares these students. I don't think it, because the way that a lot of kids aren't going straight into college. I don't think it's, or they're dropping out within the first or second year. So I'll let somebody else talk for a minute.
I think for me, this video that we watched for our class, that was the only like real thing that I have really seen about Common Core. Everything else has just been, you know, Facebook posts and kind of like your bad research thing that you posted, Maeve. It's just things like that. And so going off of the evaluating research and the video, I would say I don't agree that Common Core is the best way to go in helping the education system, just because I feel like a lot of it is, you know, they might be preparing kids to go to college, but like they said, they're also having to dumb down college standards so that kids can make it. So I feel like the education system does need help, but I don't feel like from the video, Common Core is the way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there are some things that could be useful and good in it. But like my personal opinion is like people in one state and people in another state, they probably learn differently. There's different tactics that teachers could use even from classroom to classroom that would benefit their students. And I think with this, it's kind of restricting. That's what it sounds like, at least to me. This is like the only exposure I've had to it, so I could be really off, so I'm sorry. But it seems like the teachers are kind of really restricted to how they can teach and kind of what they can do. And I think there has been studies and things that I've done research on in the past, but this is like a long time ago, so I don't know if it's still right, but that students learn really good when there's tons of variety, you know, tons of different like methods of like hands-on and visual and auditory and like all these different types of activities and just things like that. And I feel like Common Core could be kind of restricting to that. And so ultimately it could not be like benefiting students as much as other things could be.
So I'm going to put aside my personal feelings for a couple of seconds and talk about the video. The video is literally the worst documentary I've ever seen. It does not explain what Common Core is. There is no, like, these are the standards, this is the definition, is there a separation between the curriculum and the standards? Like, it doesn't do any of that. All it is people spouting their opinions. There's not a single identifiable fact given in the entire documentary that's not an opinion. And I was extremely frustrated watching it from that kind of perspective. If you want to make your point and make people believe you, you need to have something to back you up on either side. But neither of the sides ever talked about any studies, about any empirical data of any kind, and there was no research cited. They just had professionals on both sides come in and give their opinions. And so personally, I don't think, based on that documentary, anyone should be making a decision about Common Core. But that was just, obviously I still have my opinions about Common Core, but that's how I feel about the documentary itself. It is very persuasive in the negative direction to be against Common Core, but it doesn't give any empirical facts of why you should be that way.
Well, and kind of going off of that, I looked up the organization who put the video out, and it's a homeschooling organization. So already they're probably tainted against Common Core in the first place, which probably influences how they did the video, So I thought it was a good video because I obviously don't. I only know what it's telling me. But yeah, when I looked it up, I was like, oh, okay, this probably makes them lose a little bit of credibility just because there's already bias there. So
Well, pretty much it was based on all opinions. That's what it was based on. It was based on everybody's opinion who, and like Maeve said, to the negative. You know, if I, watching it as a parent, if that was the only thing that I knew about Common Core, I'd be like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. This is horrible. It's terrible. You know, I know a little bit. I know, you know, what the standardized testings and stuff are for. My mom is a program manager for standardized testings for one of the states in the United States. She has to go in and she has to help implement these standardized testings. So she works with the Common Core issue, so per se. So I know a little bit, a little more than probably what some other people do. So, all right. So we're all in agreement that it is probably not the best thing, right?
Yeah. With the knowledge that we have, yeah.
With the little knowledge that we have from the video. Do you think that what was that?
I just said the biased video.
Right. Do you think that much of the Common Core curriculum ignores empirically based, developmentally appropriate practices for children? Why or why not?
Go ahead, Maeve. I want to know what you have to say.
Oh, okay.
You just go, girl.
This is literally my major in a nutshell. Yes, the answer is 100% yes. The first three principles of AP, if you don't know anything about developmentally appropriate practice, is it is considered developmentally appropriate when it is individual and developmentally appropriate. So it means that it works for the individual. It helps the individual personally. It works with their culture. So it reflects the understandings of their culture. They aren't prohibited from learning or restricted by learning because of their culture or their exposure, and that it is developmentally appropriate. So that means that it's being taught at the stage of development that the child will be able to do that process. So there are certain things where our brains are not mature enough to be able to do a certain type of thinking until we're older. And a lot of this, we talk about push down curriculum a lot, and it means that they're trying to get things that older students have been doing and get it down to a younger level because they think that that will increase their capability to learn later on, but that's not true because the children can't process that information yet. So the problem with Common Core is that there's this blanket statement. So the standards, it's this blanket statement of, okay, everybody needs to be able to do this by a certain time, but we know that there are going to be developmental differences between each individual child, and that each of them is going to be able to learn at a different rate, and it may take them longer. When we put standards and benchmarks and criteria in and tell them, okay, well, by 5, they have to be able to do this, that means we're completely taking out that part where we're looking at the individual, making sure that they can do what they need to do at that age. And we're not taking into account the way that they learn. Cultural standpoint, there are a lot of cultures, and we studied this specifically with physical development, where encouraged to start walking until a year old, whereas in the United States, it's normal to have a child walking by 10 months, 12 months, like that range is when they start to walk. It's very important that children are not limited because of their exposure and experience. Children in the country have a very different understanding of the world than people that live in a city. The way that they understand certain words is different. The curriculum part comes in when we're telling all the children that they have to be able to identify what a car looks like. And in the country, a car to a child may be a truck, but a car to a child in the city is like your normal Honda Civic or something. And so when you give them the same standardized test, the country child may pick the truck, but the child in the city picks the correct answer. And so curriculum is where we get into that nitty-gritty. It is not developmentally appropriate. They're doing a lot of things that if it was evaluated, the NAEYC would be very upset. especially telling children that there's only one specific way to solve a math problem, there's one specific way to think about an English problem or whatever, that is just simply not okay. That's the short version.
No, that is great. I'm just typing up your thoughts.
It's a long one, so I'm sorry about that.
No, it's actually, honestly, it's really helpful to understand a little bit more about these things, because I take my 6-year-old, for example. So she's autistic. And so she learns things in a completely different way than any of the other children in her classroom. She has no other autistic kids in her classroom. She's very high functioning. She understands. She can learn. She's very, very smart. But the way that she perceives information, the way that she learns has to be different than sitting in a chair and saying, here, you need to learn this. She needs to be more hands-on. So instead of having the numbers and written on a piece of paper, she needs to visualize that. She needs to have those apples sitting in front of her. Instead of the 2 marks plus the 3 marks equals 5. She needs to have those little apples sitting in front of her. So the 2 apples plus the 3 apples equals the 5 apples. Does that make sense? That's kind of exactly what you're saying? Yeah. That's exactly how she is. And I hate to see that the things that I've gone through with my oldest child, my youngest child has to go through. And she's not learning at the same rate or the same ideas and the same things that my oldest child went through. And I think it's hard, and I think it's frustrating for me as a parent to sit here and say that my child, who has a learning disability, who has a mental disability, has to learn at the same rate as the child who has an IQ of Einstein. That's not fair. So,
yep.
And that's where IEPs pretty much come in, but IEPs are not everything.
No, true. And that's exactly where DAP comes in. It's this general overarching guideline for educators, for developmentalists, for psychologists, for anyone that works with children, that basically says if you're not addressing what they need personally and what they need in their to adapt to their culture or what they need to adapt to their developmental stage, then you're not doing it right. And you need to rethink the way you're doing it. And the problem is people that write these kinds of things like the core, like Common Core, they're not developmentalists. They're not educators. They're not people that understand the way that children function. And it's very important that we understand these kinds of principles, and then that we lobby for these things to change, and that we lobby for the research to uphold the things that our children are being told that they have to be able to do. Because if we don't, then who's going to? And that's where the advocacy part comes in for this class. Like, we just have to stand up for what we know is true.
Yep, totally get it. Totally understand.
Yeah. This is like really enlightening. I really like it. Sorry that I'm eating, guys. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
You said it's your lunch hour. Go for it.
Yeah. So I feel like this is like so intrigued by what you guys are saying, but can you remind me of what the question is? I totally forgot as I've been listening to you guys.
It's fine. Do you think that much of the Common Core curriculum ignores empirically based, developmentally appropriate practices for children?
Oh yeah, I totally agree, because that's what I even said like earlier, is I think this kind of echoing what you guys have said, but like, yeah, I think every student, every kid, if they have like a disability, or even if they don't, like I know for me, like I'm not the type that learns very well when I'm just reading a book. You know, I do so much better, and I don't have like a disability per se, like, or anything. I just do so much better if I'm hands-on or whatever. And so like I just have to figure out ways in like college even to make the curriculum fit the way I need. But like I think in what do you call it, like grade school and stuff like that, like the kids need the help from the teachers. They don't know how to learn all the time by themselves, so they need that, like they need the ability to have it personalized to them and to be able to help them understand it better. So just echoing what you guys have already said, but good.
Well, and I don't really know much about like developmentally appropriate practices. I actually don't know anything about that as far as education goes. And so my thoughts on that question were just, it sounds like the schools are motivated by money, by grants, to teach to a certain curriculum. So of course they're going to try and fit each kid into that specific mold for the money. And I just don't think that schools should be, I mean, and this is how it's been for a long time, but schools should be, you know, encouraged by money that they need to continue teaching and teach to a certain, you know, standard, just to get that funding that they need.
You're getting into another topic that I also feel very strongly about, which is the misuse of standardized testing. But we're going to skip that and go to the actual questions we're supposed to talk about.
You're very passionate about this subject, and I love it.
It's why it's my degree.
You know, I'm very thankful that, we live in a small town. We live in a town about 2,500 people. The class size of my child or my children is less than 18. So in any given year, they can have between 16 and 19 students. Honestly, I love where I am. I am terrified to move to a bigger city, that they're in a bigger school, because I feel like the lower, smaller classrooms, they're right now they're getting the needs that they need. And, you know, I'm terrified to see my girls and even my son next year going into a bigger classroom where, you know, these Common Core things are implemented and they have to learn all this stuff, and this teacher actually has 28 to 30 students that they have to teach. And so that, to me, it's scary. It really is. All right, we'll move on to the next one. And last question, what lessons have you learned to make you more skillful in okay, let me try this again. What lessons have you learned to make you more skillful in combating your chosen topic or threat?
I've just learned that people can have very, very strong opinions, regardless of what way on any topic. So like any of our topics, people can think it's really, really right or really, really wrong, regardless if the answer is pretty plain and straightforward or not. And it can be easy for, like, as I was reading through some of the articles that we had to look at that weren't necessarily good research materials, I'd be reading through some of them and I'm like, oh, I like this though. Like, this is good stuff. And then I had to take that step back and be like, you know what, like, this is just all opinion. They already had, like, the answer to a question they didn't state. Like, it's really not good, like, research material, but it can capture you really quick, you know? And so that's something that really made me aware is, like, I need to be very cautious of the things that I am believing, and I need to look for those things that do give it credibility.
It's easy to be persuaded.
Yeah.
To go off of that, I've been thinking a lot as I've been looking for research for our topic. Like, I need to take emotion out of the equation, or at least try to take emotion out of it, because that influences me and allows me to be more drawn to certain things. And so, yeah, just take emotion out of it and try and see it from every perspective. And so.
Maeve?
It just reminds me of like the fact that we have to be so careful like what we use, because we can say opinions all we want, but ultimately when people come back to it, we want them to look at our stuff and not be able to argue it. Like, we want our research to be so thorough and so exact and so well supported that it sways them for a good reason. Like, we want to inform people and have that sway their opinion. I don't want to sway people by using, like, I'm going to call it political tactics. Like, I don't want to, like, paint the other team as, like, the evil people that are super terrible and they're evil and all this stuff. I want people to see, like, I know what I'm talking about, and that's why they should believe what I'm saying.
You know, it's really interesting because we live in a time where I think it was this class where we watched The View, that video with The View, and how Whoopi Goldberg said, you know, a lot of times nowadays we have our opinions, we say our opinions, we state our opinions, and if that other person doesn't believe our opinions, then we punish them with our words, essentially. So we attack them, or we just because they have a different view than us, and everybody should believe our opinions. And I think that we need to take that into context when we're researching and we're trying to come up with the good research versus the bad research. We're not trying to attack somebody. We're trying to get them to see a different point of view, whether or not it actually influences them or not. So yeah, that's how I feel.
No, that was very well said.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Well, thanks for joining, and I will go ahead and get everything typed up, and I'll try to attempt to post it tonight. It may or may not happen. So, all right.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.